Dana should start promoting fights again and acting as the president of the UFC. He's fucking promoting Canelo versus Crawford. I'd get rid of Dana, I'd put me in charge, and I'd actually start promoting the events. Or I'd have Hunter Campbell step up.
Now, first of all, you probably straight away see the hypocrisy or the irony in Ilia Topuria saying that. Okay.
Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev, two of the UFC's hottest names, were on a collision course. But according to Demetrius Johnson, the UFC, and Dana White in particular, dropped the ball. Johnson says this fallout wasn't just personal, it was fueled by the promotion's mishandling. Meanwhile, the MMA guru is calling Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev the biggest fight the UFC could make right now. He points out that the promotion has been missing the mark lately, failing to book the matchups fans are asking for. According to him, a clash between Ilia and Islam isn't just a great stylistic fight, it's a guaranteed blockbuster. If the UFC pulls the trigger, it could deliver massive pay-per-view numbers and bring back the hype fans have been waiting for.
Absolutely amazing fight. That's the big fight right now. That I've been saying, you know, we don't get the big matchups, but those are the big matchups. Those are the ones that are going to sell 1 million pay-per-view buys. If we can see Ilia Topuria or Islam Makhachev, I know there's a lot of people like, he shouldn't have to fight Ilia. But it's like, what you got to see when you look at these big matchups is what's the alternative to that? Yeah. Is there a massive, oh, well, I guess we could just do this to follow along with the order of things and how they should be. But I love Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev. And you know what? I don't even mind an Ilia Topuria Charles Oliveira in the meantime.
Expanding on that idea, Guru says he'd love to see Ilia Topuria take on Islam Makhachev, calling it the kind of matchup that fans can't stop thinking about. While he's open to Ilia facing Charles Oliveira in the meantime, especially since there's a belt involved, Guru believes the real buzz is around Ilia versus Islam. According to him, putting those two names in the same conversation is what gets fans excited, and it's the fight that has everyone waiting for the UFC to make it happen.
Yep. For a title shot. I think that there's a theory about, you know, if there's a belt on the line, it's much bigger. Yeah. But people just love the two names. Don't always have to be a belt on the line. They do this with a BMF belt. But if Ilia Topuria fights Charles Oliveira on a pay-per-view, that's a big deal.
Oh, it's going to be bigger.
They don't need to wait for an interim belt. They don't need to wait for an undisputed. So, yeah. I don't know how he's going to do it lightweight, though. Maybe you can speak on that. He's a smaller guy coming up. Yeah. I think Ilia Topuria, though, and this is why I think he may have messed up, but I think he's in a position where the next fight has to be bigger for him. Because he's had so many, he's just knocked out Volkanovski and Holloway back-to-back. Yeah. And he was probably looking at, should I fight Volk again? I can't do it better. Yeah. So now he's sort of glory hunting. He's stuck to a level of competition that matches the level that he brings in. No, I think he'll be gone after another two.
You think another two?
Another 2, 3. If he loses, he might think, well,
I got to do some more.
Yeah, because he's such a name now in Spain, and he's a big followed guy. He got loads of views on JRE. But the thing about Ilia is, normally with him, the featherweight champion just became champ. He knocked out Volkanovski, knocked out Holloway back-to-back. Yep. You would think the next fight he'd be some minus 1,000 favorite. Yeah. But now he's got sort of like got to be put into these 50-50s. He's forced it upon himself because he doesn't want to reset hunger. Yeah. He needs to maintain hunger.
Frustrated by the current state of matchmaking, Guru didn't hold back, voicing his frustration with Dana White and calling on him to start acting like the UFC president again. He criticized Dana for focusing on boxing, particularly promoting Canelo versus Crawford, while key UFC matchups continue to get overlooked. Guru made it clear he's not happy with where the priorities seem to be, especially when the UFC has its own blockbuster fights waiting to be made.
Yep. They should re-sign Makhachev. That's what they should do. Mohammed Makhachev, you know him?
Yeah, Mohammed Makhachev.
Re-sign him, and Dana should start fucking promoting fights again. Now I'm going to get angry on this microphone. Dana should start promoting fights again and acting as the president of the UFC. He's fucking promoting Canelo versus Crawford. So I'm slamming my finger into this fucking futon here that you've got, or this half a chaise long in front of me. Yeah. But Dana is promoting Canelo versus Crawford as the UFC president. Yeah. That's a fucking traitor. That's a traitor right there to the UFC. Yeah. I honestly believe this. Fire Dana White and put me in the job, and I'll promote the UFC. I'd re-sign Makhachev, and I'd act like I would. Yeah. Either way. But that's what I would do in the UFC right now. I'd get rid of Dana. I'd put me in charge, and I'd actually start promoting the events. Or I'd have Hunter Campbell step up, because let's say the UFC, and I said this in a video I made recently, let's say the UFC is a Chinese restaurant. Yeah. And boxing is an Indian restaurant across the street. Yeah. And the Indian restaurant's doing good. Yeah. The Indian restaurant's getting customers, and they've got great dishes coming out every week. Yeah. Okay? And the Chinese restaurant is shit. That's the UFC.
In addition, Demetrius Johnson pointed out that when you look at the current MMA scene, certain moves like Ilia Topuria vacating his title might seem surprising, but they're setting the stage for big matchups ahead. He sees a clash between Ilia and Islam Makhachev as a major fight in the making, and whenever it goes down, it's going to be a must-watch battle with high stakes.
I mean, when you look at the landscape of mixed martial arts, there are some things that happen. You know, Ilia Topuria relinquished his belt at 145. I was shocked when he did that, but it kind of sets up some new matchups that are coming up for him, especially, and everything. You know, him going up to Islam Makhachev, that's gonna be a banger fight.
Yeah.
It's a smaller coming up. It'll be interesting because he is bigger from when I heard him on the Joe Rogan podcast. Like 191, I think he was walking around. That's massive. So for him to cut to 145, it just seems almost like, how did he do that? But now that he's going up to 155, I always like when athletes go up heavier to their natural weight. Right? Like him cutting to 145, that's not natural. He was able to do it. It's almost like Conor when he was cutting to 145. He was looking at Skeletor, you know, knocking on death's door. Yeah.
You know?
It's always going to be the hardest fight next. If he was to fight Islam and beat Islam, it's like, who? It's going to have to be Arman Sarukian, someone who hasn't lost yet. I mean, he's lost to Islam, but it's going to have to be a big fight. With that mindset, like when we talk about that, he's a guy who's not going to be in his sport for a very long time.
Meanwhile, Guru shared his take on Ilia Topuria's fighting style, pointing out a key issue he sees. Ilia tends to fight like a bully, constantly pressing forward and forcing the action. Even when he's on the outside, he stays slick, using sharp movement, timing, feints, and head movement to close the distance. He's aggressive by nature, and while that makes him dangerous, it also raises questions about how he'll handle opponents who can control pace and space.
He's now made the millions. I think he was already quite well off anyway. He's quite a smart dude. So now he's sort of going into this Makhachev matchup. The problem I have with it is his style. He's a bit of a bully. Even though he's slick. Even though he's good on the outside and he moves well and he's got such good timing and feints and head movement, he's very he presses forward. They can't do anything about it. He forces it. You know, he's a bully.
He forces the fight.
Backing that up with his own breakdown, Demetrius Johnson broke down further how Ilia Topuria brings the fight no matter what. If his opponent tries to avoid the action, Ilia doesn't wait. He charges forward and takes it to them. Johnson highlighted the stylistic challenge ahead if Ilia ever faces Islam Makhachev. Johnson also pointed out Islam's strong judo and wrestling base, noting that a matchup between the two would be a true clash of styles. Pressure striker versus elite grappler.
He forces the fight.
If you're gonna run from him, he's eventually gonna find you.
He's
and
gonna find you.
You're gonna have to fight him, right?
Stay away. Stay away from Ilia.
I feel Islam southpaw, body kick. You know how would if he throws a body kick, will he check in right hand? If will he catch it? Islam does have the judo background. He does have the wrestling background. So I like that because they're gonna
clash.
They're gonna clash,
which is why I like the Lopez matchup for him, because he would clash with Ilia in the pocket. Same with Oliveira. He's gonna walk in with his high and tight guard.
High tight guard, Muay Thai style.
In a major development with Islam Makhachev now vacating his title, Michael Bisping gave him credit, saying it takes real guts to give up the belt. Bisping pointed out that Islam had hopes of becoming a 2-division champion, chasing the same opportunity he once gave to Alexander Volkanovski. However, Bisping also noted that trying to manage multiple champions and interim belts across divisions has done more harm than good. He highlighted that it's led to confusion, chaos, and a string of unfortunate situations for the UFC.
Lightweight title.
And you know what? Fair play to this guy. That takes a tremendous amount of honor and courage to do that. Yes, he's worked very hard. Yes, he's the best lightweight fighter that the sport's ever seen. He defended the belt 4 times, but he's moving on to fresh pastures and he's going after Jack Della Maddalena. Now, the story is, of course, he wanted to be a 2-weight division champion. He wanted the same luxury that he afforded to Alexander Volkanovski for him to be a simultaneous 2-weight division champion. But as we know, bringing in 2-weight division champions and creating interim titles has caused nothing but backlogs and shit shows. So of course, we're talking about the heavyweight division there. But if you're the champion, you have an obligation to the sport, to the fans, and to everyone else in the division to honor and defend that title or to move on. And that is what Islam Makhachev has done here.
Reacting to this shift, Ilia Topuria took to X to send a clear message ahead of his next move. He announced that on June 28th, he plans to fulfill another dream by becoming the lightweight champion. Topuria didn't hold back either, throwing a shot at Islam Makhachev by calling him out for stepping away. He added, "On June 28th, another dream will come true. I'll be the champion champion of the lightweight division. Charles, my apologies in advance. I'm just fighting for my dreams. It's unfortunate that Makhachev ran away, 17-0. However, Bisping pointed out the irony in Ilia Toporia's statement, noting that while Ilia called out Islam Makhachev for stepping away, he's done the same thing, only faster. Ilia defended his featherweight belt just once against Max Holloway before making the jump to lightweight. According to Bisping, it's hard to ignore the double standard, especially when Ilia is now chasing the same two-division glory he criticized Islam for pursuing.
Now, first of all, you probably straight away see the hypocrisy or the irony in Ilia Topuria saying that, okay? Because he only defended the belt one time against Max Holloway, and then he moved up. He essentially did the exact same thing that Islam Makhachev did, but he did it much, much quicker. Now, when we look at the featherweight division, there is other viable contenders. Yes, there is Diego Lopez. Yes, there is Yair Rodriguez. There is, of course, Movsar Evloev, but he moved up, probably because the weight cuts are a son of a bitch, and he couldn't be asked doing that anymore. And he's saying that Islam Makhachev has run off to the welterweight division, obviously to avoid him. Now, when you look at Islam, he's defended the belt 4 times, 2 times against Volkanovski. Oh yeah. So if you wanted to be a critic, if you wanted to talk a little bit of shit, if you wanted to paint a bullshit narrative, you could say that only one of those title defenses really matters, because Renato Moicano was on really short notice, Volkanovski 2 times with a featherweight coming up, and Dustin Poirier, man's a legend, fighting for his final fight soon against Max Holloway in New Orleans.
To further defend Islam's choices, Bisping emphasized that a fighter in this sport has every right to make his own decisions. He pointed out that while Ilia Topuria has struggled with making weight before, Islam has faced even bigger challenges, cutting down to 155 pounds time and again. Bisping's take suggests that the weight issues both fighters face add another layer to why their career moves make sense on a personal level.
Like that. Now, if you look at the lightweight rankings, of course, there is still a lot of viable contenders for Islam Makhachev to face. Yeah, we know Arman Tsarukyan. Yeah, he had a bad weight cut or he pulled a muscle in his back. Regardless, right? He's still ranked number 1. There's Justin Gaethje, who was yet to fight. There's Max Holloway, if he was to win 1 or 2. There's Mateusz Gamrot. There's Paddy Pimblett. And of course, there's Ilia Topuria, right? So there's a lot of people for Islam to fight. However, the man's free to do what he wants. And just like Ilia Topuria struggles to make 145 pounds, we have seen time and time again that Islam Makhachev does not have an easy time making 155. What I'm saying here is that this isn't a given for Islam Makhachev. This is a real fight, a real test. You want to move up a weight class? You want to test the waters up there? You're going to go straight in at the deep end and take on the champion? Massive opportunity. Become a 2-weight division champion. Join the likes of Conor McGregor, Daniel Cormier, Amanda Nunes, George St. Pierre, Henry Cejudo. There's a few others. Maybe there is, there isn't. Let me know in the comment section who I'm forgetting. But he wants to do that, and that's his right. And fair play to him. And we're all excited for that.
In addition, Bisping warned that if Ilia Topuria beats Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev loses to JDM, then drops back down to 155, the UFC could be facing a real mess. Bisping expects Ilia to refuse a fight with Islam, just like Islam did, leading to the same kind of drama and standoff between the two fighters. It could turn into a showdown full of conflict, with both sides unwilling to back down.
The bookies, if Ilia Topuria beats him, and then Islam loses to Jack, and he comes back down, we're going to have a real shit show on our hands, because Ilya's going to say, no, you need to win a fight at 155 pounds. Because remember, Islam said that about Ilia for the longest time. Khabib Nurmagomedov said it as well. Javier Mendez said it, and I totally get it. Listen, we already did that for Volkanovski twice. We don't want to fight a guy that's a 145. Then we have to beat him. Then we don't get the credit. Just like some people might have said when he beat Volkanovski or when he beat Renato Moicano on short notice. The reality is Islam shouldn't pay any attention to any of this, because what he's done, what he's achieved in this sport, he's the greatest pound-for-pound fighter on the roster. He's defended the lightweight championship 4 times in a row.
Echoing Bisping's concerns, the Wade concept fired back at Ilia Topuria's post on X, saying Ilia is the last person who should be taking shots at Islam Makhachev. Wade pointed out that unlike Topuria, Makhachev defended his belt 4 times and cleared out top contenders in the division. He called Ilia's comments hypocritical, especially since Ilia also vacated his title while there were still plenty of strong challengers waiting at featherweight. For Wade, Ilia's mocking Islam doesn't hold weight given the circumstances.
Makhachev ran away. Ilya's the last guy to say this, because Makhachev, unlike Topuria, had defended his belt at 155 multiple times and had beat pretty much everybody in the top 5 that could challenge him, and he was starting to have rematches and potential rematches, things like that. It wasn't going to be as interesting as potentially him moving up. The weight was becoming harder for him to make. We get all that, but Ilya also left 45 and gave up his belt when other potential challengers could have arisen there as well, right? Like, do you see somebody like Diego Lopez go, Ilya ran away from me, so I got to fight Volk? You're not seeing Mavzar say, hey, you know, Ilya ran away from me, when Mavzar should have probably had the title shot versus Volk, or the vacant title fight versus Volk. So
looking at the bigger picture, Wade weighed in on Islam Makhachev vacating his title, saying it's a clear sign the UFC is done with two division champions. In his view, the era of holding belts in two weight classes is officially over. He pointed to Ilia Topuria as another example.
Atlanta. This is massive because a lot of people were assuming that this was going to be a double champ situation. What this tells me is the two-belt era is over in the UFC. That's what this tells me. This is no longer even a question in my mind, because you look at Ilia Topuria, who moved up from 145. They wouldn't let him keep the belt and simultaneously challenge for the 155 belt. Now Islam, who has at 155 cleaned out the top 5, has every reason to, under the old rules of the two-belt system, you know, you can go and challenge for that second belt, get your picture made with both the gold on shoulders, neither of which I have. You guys know this, Mr. No Shoulder. That used to be the rule. Turns out that's not the case anymore. The UFC is going away from that, and I honestly don't mind it.
Elaborating on this view, Wade Concept emphasized that while championship belts matter, what matters even more are the exciting matchups. He explained that a single title in a division keeps things clear and meaningful, but when one fighter holds two belts, it clogs up the system. According to Wade, it takes away from the action and delays the fights fans want to see. For him, keeping divisions active and delivering the right matchups is what truly keeps the sport alive.
It's been such a thing for fighters to reach for, and we talk about pound for pound, how it meant to be a simultaneous two-division belt holder. It never really meant as much to me, and still doesn't now, as it does to get fun matchups, right? The belts, yes, are important because there is one belt. When you have a guy holding up two different divisions trying to hold on to both belts, it makes things less important, and we don't get the fights we want. The two-belt era was fun while it lasted, but now you're not going to get divisions held up. That's a cool part about this. I would have liked to have seen that fight. I hope that one day we still do get that fight, although I don't think Ilya can get to 170 and still be his peak self, so we'll see.
Adding another expert voice, Luke Thomas weighed in on the potential Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria showdown, calling it the single best pound-for-pound fight the UFC could have made, outside of Tom Aspinall versus John Jones. For Thomas, it's not just a high-level clash of styles, but a battle between two of the most complete fighters in the game today.
That probably the single best fight you could make, and maybe arguably even the biggest, although John and Tom probably has a bit of a conversation there, but certainly one of the biggest would be number 1 versus number 2 pound for pound, so Islam versus Ilya. You do lose that, or at a bare minimum, that's not going to happen next. I guess there's a world where he could go back to 55 and potentially make that. That seems unlikely, at least for now, but couldn't rule it out, I suppose. So the trade-off is you didn't quite get it delivered to you in a way that yielded maximum excitement, and you do lose the single best fight. But this is my point about getting multiple fights at 170 if you're Islam.
As for predictions, Guru gave his prediction for a potential clash between Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev, and he's firmly backing Islam, not just for a win, but a second-round TKO. He sees Ilia landing a few clean shots early, getting the crowd hyped, but when they engage again, Islam grabs him. Ilia might mistake it for a takedown attempt, but before he knows it, he's been tripped and taken down. From that point on, Guru says it's all downhill for Topuria, with Islam taking full control and finishing the job.
Yep.
Right, so who you got? Ilia Topuria, Islam.
I've got Makhachev.
Okay.
Yep.
I got Makhachev as well.
And I've got Makhachev second round TKO with a knee in the
Oh,
clinch.
damn, you going by rounds too.
Yeah,
huh?
I think he'll shoot a couple takedowns. Ilya will stuff it. Ilya will catch him a few times and people will go ooh and ah.
Yeah.
And then when they clash again, I think Makhachev will go grab him. Yep. Ilya will think, oh, he's shooting again.
Yep.
Tie clinch, bang, bang,
Yep.
body, knee to the head. Ilya's all of a sudden stumbled.
Uh-huh.
Downhill from there.
Okay,
That's what I think.
Adding his forecast, Demetrius Johnson gave his take on how Islam Makhachev could win if the fight with Ilia Topuria happens. He sees it going into the later rounds, where Islam's grappling and pressure start to wear Ilia down. Johnson predicts a potential finish by Darcy choke once the opening presents itself, especially after Ilia starts to slow and the scrambles get heavier.
Okay, I'm not a guru because I don't know what he's doing. If he wins it, I don't know. I think if he wins it, it's going to be either later rounds, maybe by the Dars.
I think he beats Oliveira with a body shot, though.
As the tension between Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev continues to simmer, the MMA world finds itself caught in a storm of bold claims, brewing rivalries, and unmet potential. If you've been enjoying this breakdown and want more fight talk, bold opinions, and no-nonsense MMA coverage, stick around. There's plenty more coming. Drop your thoughts below on what you think about the current landscape of UFC.